Hello everyone, another exciting evening with an amazing speaker, and I'm so pleased to have another world caliber entrepreneur sitting here in Coffs Harbour, even though he's a Queenslander. I'm not going to do any competition between New South Wales and Queensland, especially footy. I won't go into that. However, I'd like to start, there was quite a lot of words around startup, and before we go into where you're coming from, how you became an entrepreneur, maybe we can demystify the word startup, and we can start with that, what it actually means, but I'd like to put it out there.
Sure. Can I just say thanks, first of all, up to who here is an entrepreneur? Look, thank you very much. I get a lot of these things, and usually I thank the councilman first, the local politician, the mayor, God knows who else. Who cares about them? You've actually taken your time out of your day, and I know it's a very busy day as an entrepreneur, so thank you very much. I really hope we deliver some value here tonight, so I really, really do appreciate you and say thanks for coming along. I also want to say thanks to current next service people, because it's because of them we can sit here tonight and enjoy some good meal, good wine and some good company. That it's very sobering to think that while we're sitting here doing this, there's a son, daughter, brother or sister down there with their head down at a conflict zone somewhere. So I don't want to forget the service people out there allowing us to do this. Thanks to Startup Grind, thanks Tony, Adrian, Thea, Jobs for New South Wales and everyone else that lady from the council rattled off. She was fantastic. I couldn't write them all down. So, right, got that bit out of the way. Startup. So I'm an investor in businesses, and I choose to think I invest in tech businesses. You may have seen me on Shark Tank. I apologise. When I was in the army, they used to call me belt fed. I talked way too fast. So if you can't understand me, please stick your hand up and say, slow down. Once again, you need to get value from tonight. If I don't give you value, you should hate me. So I choose to think I invest in tech startups, and a startup to me means a tech startup. So I apologise if you don't fit this definition. It's nothing personal, it's just my thing. That means that you can take your business rapidly and scale it around the globe. Now, nothing in that says tech, but the only way you rapidly scale around the globe is by using software or a network. That's the reality. So they're the sort of businesses that I like, because I know I can make a lot of money from them. And with money, you do good things. You do good, when you do good, you can get good things done. So I am exceptionally capitalistic because only good things come from it. I want to make other people successful. I want to make sure they can have thriving businesses and they can actually employ people. And I think that tech startup, or what I call startup, is just an absolute force for good. The rest of the world is killing us in startups. We've got a lot that works against us in Australia. We've got exceptionally high wages. We have a diabolical telecommunications systems. We have regulation like you wouldn't believe. What we used to have was the advantage we could access to capital. So 10 years ago, probably 12 years ago, it used to cost $500,000 to start a startup. Nowadays you can do it, as we heard earlier, for $25,000, which is not probably far wrong, except you still should ask for more. That used to be our advantage, because we could get access to $500,000, and the poor bugger in the favela in Brazil, or the person in Ukraine or someplace in India couldn't. But now it only costs $20,000 to start a startup. They can get access to that, same as we can. So we are no longer have an unfair advantage. That's a huge issue for us. So we need to, as a nation, because I'm first and foremost an Australian, I'm secondly a Queenslander, we need to actually do that a lot better as a nation. So startup to me means it's a business that can rapidly scale around the globe. Typically means you're not shipping things, hard things. It literally is a service delivered over a network. That to me is what a startup means. Long answer, sorry about that.
No, I think it's very valid, and I think that demystifies many understandings of what startup means, because the name itself, it's quite misleading. And some people refer to it as, it shouldn't be called startup, but scale up, and how rapidly you can grow. And so going back to the beginning, going back where you started, and you started in the army, and we have fellow servicemen here too. So if you come back to the beginning and how you started, where you come from, where the interest came to fix things, to see the problem, maybe you can touch on that and how you started your first business.
Yeah, I think one of the hardest things you'll ever do in starting a business is starting a business. Making that decision to step out of your comfort zone and get in and do that, it's actually probably a tough call. I was 23 back then. I didn't think about it very hard, thankfully, because if I did, I wouldn't have done it, to be honest. I saw an opportunity and I went for it. I had a little bit of, and actually Glenn Richards, Glenn Richards, if you ever watched Shark Tank, he's an amazing man. He's a beautiful human being. He's got a gorgeous family. He's just way too nice for TV. And but he has this saying, it's called an entrepreneurial brain fart. And literally, as a technician, you have this seizure moment where you decide all of a sudden, because you're good at doing something, you'll be good at selling that same thing, which is not always true. So, and it's true, you look at it and you go, I can do that, and my God, I can make money from it. I should do more of that and make more money. It's never quite that simple. But why not start? If you don't start, you'll never find out. I look at myself in some respects as some sort of decrepit, horrible World War I general, where I'm encouraging everyone possible to go and start a business. I don't care what you do, start a business is the best thing for the country, because I know 99% of you will be machine gunned. You will fail. That 1% will actually make the new economy for this nation. I want to encourage people to do that, and I feel bad at times, especially I'm talking to friends, kids and stuff. I'm like, yeah, you should start a business because you're probably going to fail. But you don't know. You don't know. You can't pick who's going to fail. It's impossible to pick who's going to fail. It really is. We've given up. So, but everyone get out there and what I say is get the right training and experience and get the right skills. That doesn't mean an education, but it can mean an education. Get the appropriate skills, what you want to do, build a network, find a problem, go and solve it. So, like I said, skills doesn't mean education, but typically can do. And if you go to university for 3 or 4 years and you build a good network, you can do both things at once. Am I answering your question, or am I just rambling? Right?
I was hoping to hear more about repairing compasses and things like that.
My job in the army was exceptionally boring. That probably helped me leave. I started as an electronics technician, joined at 15 years old. What's worse than recruiting a 15-year-old? Signing a 9-year contract when you're 15. Can't do that now, and as we shouldn't. My job was essentially, we used to repair everything except radio, radar and avionics. That included, I did guided weapon systems, I did a course at Lucasites, the reactor, we did medical and dental equipment, but mostly what I fixed was, compasses and binoculars, the things that should point north and the things that make things look bigger. They're pretty boring to fix.
Yeah, but it seems like if it is connected to our army, there's this spirit of camaraderie and teammates and teamship, which is quite crucial in business as well. And fixing things, I think be diligent around, bring things to a solution. I think that's one of the key core elements I would see. But correct me if I'm wrong. So going from the army and you started business, how did it eventuate? And you sold the business then 2 years later.
Yeah, so I'm not too sure being a service person actually equips you well to be in business, to be honest. I think that if you ever know any service people, that there tends to be an exceptionally strong camaraderie built up. Esprit de corps, call it what you want, but you're all mates. It's really weird. When you join the army, you don't instantly become. I regard myself as an ex-digger. When I was a digger, but you don't. When you sign the enlistment papers, you're not a digger. At some point after, this machine accepts you as being a digger, and therefore you become that. It's a really weird moment when you think about it. The one thing that organisation doesn't treat well is betrayal. In fact, it's dealt with in a very martial fashion, if you know what I mean. So, one thing that happens in business a lot is betrayal. So honestly, it doesn't actually, and you spend a while sort of fighting through that, understanding why the hell did that person do that? I thought I trusted them, and they're literally trying to stab you in the back for a buck. Not everyone does that, but enough people do that, and far more than you encountered in the services. So I'm not too sure the army or the service life sets you up for initial ultimate success. However, it does give you a work ethic. I hate it when my staff turn up late. So if I turned up late, it was just easier to take myself to the jail cells rather than get beat up and taken there by somebody else. Literally, I have a poor. I turned up late today, so I'm sorry about that. I have a poor tolerance for tardiness, and my aircraft broke down. It was a very first world problem. And you just expect people to get the job done, and that's not how life outside the services operates, especially the young people nowadays. Where were the young people out here before? You all need to sort of grow a set and just get on and do stuff. Because honestly, it's what I've been used to anyway. So I'm not too sure the services set you up. I think there's some good foundations in there which you've actually got to understand, interpret, and build on top of. Once again, I forgot the question. That rosé is really good.
Ah, I bought it for you. However, so going to the first business, you sold after the first few years, and what happened there? Tell us about how you became an entrepreneur.
So started that business November 1994. You have to excuse me, sorry. It was a dial-up internet service provider. You know, we had the modems and stuff, and you know, we had 35,000 customers when we sold that business. Sold that in 2 tranches in 1999 and 2000 after operating for about 6 years. Really got quite concerned about the antics of Telstra, you know, the monopoly telecommunications carrier at the time. It's a good thing we haven't remonopolised telecommunications, isn't it? And so we took some cash off the table. We were in Adelaide at that point in time, moved back to Brisbane, started a second business with an old schoolmate called Pipe Networks. We started that in 2001. We listed that in the ASX in 2005 and sold that in 2010. So that was the sort of potted history. I know I've probably gone a bit past that, I suppose, and wrecked your questions. But that was sort of, and then I became an investor after that, I suppose.
So I think it's public knowledge, the Pipe Networks you sold for $373 million.
Yes, me and the 920 other shareholders were very happy.
Right. What was your share in there?
Enough.
Enough. I thought I asked the question. So you don't invest all of your wealth into startups. And startups are risky business, as we all know. What brought you to invest into startups and why?
Yeah, look, I figured out that I really didn't want to run another business again, to be honest. I made myself quite unhealthy and unwell from my 2 businesses. I'm not a naturally fit person. And so, you know, if you could just lie in front of a computer all day and just tape away and just eat cheesels and drink Coke all day, that's a good thing, right? But I made myself quite I used to be 50 kilos bigger, as grotesque as that sounds. So, you know, and so I worked too hard and I made myself quite ill. And I knew I suppose, fixate too much on those businesses to my body's detriment. And, you know, I've since fixed that. And so I just know I can't get into business again, to be honest. I'll just get too carried away. So I much prefer to invest in other young people and make them unhealthy and ill, which would be fantastic. So it's a true answer.
So if you had potential investors in the audience, what advice would you give them?
Investors? Yeah. Start slow, take a long time. So I'm not going to give you investment advice because I'll get sued for it. But so get your own advice. But if I was to do it again, let's go that way. I would start slower. My first investment was you know, I won't talk in dollar terms because it probably sounds a little bit arrogant, some of the money we invested. But I think I would have probably only invested in cheque sizes a quarter of the size of what I knew now when we started out at, to be honest. We've done pretty good. We've returned 1.5 times our cash from our family from what we've invested in startups. So we're not losing money. Don't cry for us, whatever you do. But I still would have started a lot slower. We still paid a lot of money against the wall. You know, like some of the businesses we convinced to shut down because they were just destroying family lives. We just had to. You know, the money we invested was not worth killing people. Was not worth, you know, the detriment to those human beings that we saw. So start slow, lots of encouragement, network like crazy. We now see 600, so I've got 7 staff who work in my office. We see 600 pitches a year. Last year we made 8 investments. So, you know, and we rejected out of hand more than the 700. Just because they were just probably FMCG, they were hard goods or food and beverage or something. We just don't do that at all. We didn't bother to get back to them in a lot of cases, to be honest.
What is the size of traditional investment? What is the size of a investment? So is it between 3 to 5 million, or is it between 50,000 to 100,000?
No. So we're very, very early stage. So, you know, we invest in what I call post-traction. So, hey, have you got something? Do people like it? Are they buying it? Or using it? The best traction's profit. If you've got profit, you don't need me, right? The next best traction is revenue. That's okay. The next best traction after that is usage. So, you know, we have one business that's got, you know, 7.5 million users with 5,000 a day signing up. Stuff or revenue, doesn't matter. We'll figure that out later on. So, you know, traction counts. So we typically invest less than up to we say up to $300,000 on the first check, and no more than $1 million per portfolio. But we also recently broke that and put half a brick into one, and our biggest is $6 million. So rules are that, hey, it's my money, it's my rules. I'll just make them up as I go along.
And I guess you can take it as a portfolio approach. You know that some will fail, some will succeed very well.
Yeah.
And have you got any success story you can share, like real examples?
Yeah, I do. So the one we had an exit start of this year, a company called DoseMe. They were a software-based pharmaceutical dosing platform for dangerous drugs. We exited to a US NASDAQ-listed company, and my confidentiality is that thick, but I can tell you what's in the public. The exit on that was $30 million US, of which there was two-thirds was upfront and one-third's contingent, and that will probably make the contingencies. It was a bloody good deal for us.
Okay. So in regards to...
dozens of multiples of cash returned. Dozens of.
So that, I suppose, paid for some that are not as well performing. And so in relation to Australian startup scene, and there's a fair bit of traction in Brisbane, River City Labs. Now you open up Sydney with Harbour City, or Harbour Pitch, and Harbour City Labs, is it called?
I sold River City Labs in October last year to Australian Computer Society.
Yep.
They've since opened up. They've taken River City Labs and they've now branded their Sydney operation Harbour City Labs, and Melbourne have one called Bay City Labs. So it's quite generous. They've kept that name. I find that quite humbling, to be honest. So look, it's going well. I help them out. I probably go to a third of their events around Australia, and I think the Australian Computer Society have an amazing opportunity to be that known and trusted brand in the startup space. And in tech startup, the only thing that matters, why I like tech startup actually, is the fact that if you look at the expense bill of a tech startup, it's 70% wages, really well-trained young people. It doesn't matter where you live. And it's not, you know, the capital is low, the overheads are just, it's mostly labour. It's a beautiful business. And we can, you know, from Australia, we are 3% of the world's GDP in this country. If you think your market's Australia, whatever. Actually, if you think your market's Australia, don't see a VC. If you think your market's Australia, just stay and go get some money from a bank. 97% of the world lives outside of this country. And if you're not selling to them, you're probably going backwards. So that might sound cruel, and I make these statements to produce a conversation, so don't think I'm actually trying to tease you or whatever it may be. I just want to have that conversation. I honestly, firmly believe that. 97% of the world's GDP does not live inside our borders. Really, where do you think you're selling?
So looking at your portfolio and new technology coming, we talked about blockchain briefly. What excites you? What do you see currently on the horizon that really is exciting to potentially look into? Is it the technology? Is it a certain type of problems? Is it the assets that are sitting out there not being used? What excites you right now?
Look, technology never excites me, which might sound really weird, because it always changes. So I was in London a few weeks back and did a talk, and it was a panel. It was the worst panel ever, actually. It was horrible. But this is far better, Tony. But it was just, there was diplomats on there, you know, put me in a panel of diplomats, what the hell's going on? But they asked me about, they literally, and I was the last person to talk, and there was like a 5-minute intro from each, and there was question and answer. And they talked about, they mentioned 5G, it was like technical buzzword bingo, 5G, AI, machine learning, all this AR, VR, all this sort of, you know. And to me, I don't care so much about that. We invest in people, not businesses, in really young, highly skilled, highly motivated people who want to take on the world. They will use the latest highbrow in computer science. Right now, that's AI and machine learning. It used to be called data science, and before that it was data warehousing, and before 5G it was 4G, and before that it was WAP, and it was 3G, and it was something else. So the new thing always comes along. That doesn't faze me. It's cool to watch, don't get me wrong, but it's just the latest highbrow in computer science. And so for us, it's the teams. And I think as a society, what we need to do, we can have an honest conversation, is none of this technology counts if we're not willing to actually to decouple regulation from our economy. I mean, there's no way, you'll get a 5 or 10% productivity, probably you get a 1 to 5% productivity improvement from all these things without regulation change. If we change regulations and take out some monopolies, you'll get a 15% productivity improvement. That's the real thing. Like, look at pharmacies, for example. Look at bloody telecoms, for Christ's sakes. Look at a whole bunch of stuff. If you remove the regulation and allow these technologies to expand in that space, you'll go from 1% improvement, which every year on year, is worth doing anyway, don't get me wrong, to a 5, 10, 15% improvement. That's massive. So for me, it's not so much about the tech, but it's about opening up. And if you've seen me online and stuff, I'm quite vocal with a lot of social and political issues, because we just need to lose the regulation. We need to get back to, cause I'm not an ALP person, we need to get back to Hawke-Keating era, opening up of markets and actually removing regulation. We've lost our productivity push. And if we regain the productivity push, we'll actually allow these technologies to come and really give us these innovative solutions, which will lower our cost of living, which is what we need to do.
That's a great segue to regional Australia. And, there's a bit of competition between Brisbane, Sydney, Melbourne. And you could ask who has the better startup ecosystem, New South Wales, Queensland or Victoria, but I'm not going there. I'm going to tap into general regional Australia and the opportunity to have lifestyle, potentially have fast internet, and maybe have affordable living. And lifestyle basically fits into it, and be surrounded by like-minded people. I think that's one of the reasons why we decided to be the first regional chapter in Australia. Where you saw quite a lot of regional Queensland, where do you see the opportunity of regional towns playing a key role to be innovative, they are confronted by the problems, they are confronted by their challenges, but there's maybe opportunity to innovate. Where do you see it?
Yeah, so my background is I was born in Cloncurry, grew up in Emerald and Rockhampton, Emerald, where the world's best thermal coal comes from. I just want to start the argument, so I put that out there. Love it. Look, I just love being in Australia and love being in Queenslander, but I find people outside of capital cities a damn sight more genuine than people inside capital cities. So I've spent a lot of time in Queensland. So, excuse me, the Queensland government had this program called Advanced Queensland, probably similar. I don't know much about jobs for New South Wales, but probably similar to that. I'm not too sure. Part of that, there was the Office of Chief Entrepreneur. I was supposed to be the first chief entrepreneur, but then I found out I was having twin girls, and I said, yeah, no, I'm not going to do that. So I was the second one, and I spent, getting back to what Thea said before about me flying around, I literally took my aircraft out of Brisbane. I was only in the country for 11 months that year. I did 14 trips out of Brisbane. I basically filled up my plane full of investors, entrepreneurs, out of Brisbane, took them to as far north as Cairns, out to St George, Longreach, Cloncurry, Richmond, you name it, every place with probably more than 15, probably more than 5,000 people in Queensland. We took out there and we literally went and we networked out there. We met the local chamber. Regional Australia, and from that perspective, regional Queensland to me is so important. The biggest issue out there is telecoms. If you ever liked NBN, you're part of the problem. Right? It was never, ever, ever a good idea. What we've done in Queensland, I've lobbied this for 10 years with successive Queensland governments, was to take, there's a vast amount of unused fibre optic capacity throughout Queensland. We've actually lobbied them, and now FibreCo got launched this week on the 1st of July, got launched. We've actually launched a brand new long-haul, high-speed backhaul network throughout Queensland. That's been 2.5 years in the making. Once we start, it's 3 months to build it. It's been 2.5 years to convince government to do it. I'm a network guy, right? Have you heard the saying that to a hammer, everything looks like a nail? Right? To a network guy, every problem gets solved with more, better, cheaper, faster bandwidth. Right? You'll at least find the next, once you do that, you'll find the next problem to solve. Until you solve that problem, massive problems in regional areas, young people leaving. Why is that? Network's always cited as one of those, whether it's true or not. Let's just get rid of the problem. It's really cheap to get rid of, amazingly cheap to get rid of. We're about to build a tunnel in Brisbane City costing $4.5 billion. FibreCo at its worst will cost $100 million and will take care of half the state for bandwidth. City, country, or city and outer city priorities are so busted and wrong in this country. Probably the same in New South Wales and in Queensland. Bandwidth's really easy. We should just do it and get over it. So I'm a massive fan of. So I think the lady from council before talked about metro equivalent stuff in Coffs Harbour. That's just so important. Metro equivalent anywhere. You should be able to buy, especially in a network sense, a service from Coffs Harbour to Sydney for the same price as North Sydney to Sydney City. There should be no price difference, because actually, guess what? There's no cost difference. That's the shitty part about this. There's no cost difference to provide the service from Coffs Harbour to Central Sydney. There is from North Sydney to Central Sydney. No cost difference. So that's really, really important. Yes, that was the last note I had.
So there's no cost difference. So we understand that NBN has its challenges. We're not going to go and touch on that because they could be opening Pandora's box.
If you want.
You touched on equipping the entrepreneurs with the right tools and education. If you look at the current school, university education system, how can we prepare our entrepreneurs the best way? I know we can get them out the door, get out of the building, as Steve Blank says, but what can we do to change? Is ACA one of the answers? Is incubators, accelerators the answer? Or is changing the universities? What do you think?
One of the notes I took here was incubator versus accelerator. And I don't want to trigger any memories for anyone, but to me, an incubator keeps a baby alive. I think it's a very poor term to use in respect to a business. An accelerator is a great term because we're going to make you go faster. We shouldn't be about keeping things alive. You know, if they don't deserve to be alive in a business sense, they should go away, to be honest. So, because the market has said, we don't like what you're selling. So there's no way we should prop that up. We should actually say to the person doing that, look, great, thank you for trying. No one likes it. Stop. Do anything else and you'll do better, right? So it's an important definitional issue, to be honest. And I forgot the first half of your question. I'm terrible at this.
Education?
Education, yeah, it's education. So, massive fan of education. I said before, I want people to start a business as young as they can after they have the appropriate skills, built the appropriate network, found a problem, and then go out to solve it. So, and I think you can take care of skills and network with a university degree, with the right university. So, it's exceptionally important. Do I think universities are teaching the kids the right stuff? No. Do I think that they're expensive? Yes. So, we have to be really careful there. I didn't finish high school, so I'm sorry, but you don't need to. You should finish high school and you should go to university.
Sorry, I do have to say that my daughter is going through HSC. You do have to finish the HSC, Jana.
I know, it's really bad. I get asked to go talk at schools. I say, what did you do in year 12? No, I didn't finish year 11. So I don't know what year 12 in school means.
Yeah, but I have to say that I totally support my daughter, whichever way she chooses, and if she chooses not to go through HSC, that's fine too.
Well, there's a great bloke. I had a chat with this guy. I knew him in Brisbane so much. I met him in China of all places. We had a beer for the first time ever, I think. I met him over coffee in Brisbane. A guy in charge of CCIQ, a Scottish guy called Stephen Tate. And he said, the problem with our kids not doing entrepreneur stuff is us. So what do you mean? I said, we say you must go to university, you must get a good education, get a good job, do this. And we have to say to them, no, just drop out of university. I don't really care what you do. Just start some crazy business. I don't really care. And as a brand new dad, I've gone, are you crazy? But it was actually what I was advocating without actually saying it out loud. So I think our problem with our kids not getting into business is actually the adults' problem, not the kids' problem. We don't give them enough support. Let's face it, the safety of this country is freaking amazing. You can balls up a business totally. You are not going to be. You probably there's a high chance you won't be destitute in the gutter, right? If you've got family behind you as well, there's not at all. Get out there and give it a go. If anything, we need to change our attitude towards failure. Attitude towards failure needs to be, great, you gave it a go. That's awesome. Some people will talk down to you. Some people will sort of say, that was a mistake. Some will say, great, we've just given you an amazing training course. Let's do it again. So we need to get more of the second two and less of the first two. The first one. So
there's very common terms, STEM, and I'm a big fan of not only STEAM, but I would say almost STEAM for entrepreneurship to start with. So imagine if you had a school and instead of HSC, you actually an HSC exam, you pitch in front of Steve for investment. Imagine if you have 2 years, you work on something that you're totally passionate about, you can define the problem clearly, you learn how to sell, how to pitch, and then as a HSC you have a panel of investors. And would you support that? Or is it too young?
That's quite young. That's very young. Look, in general, not at HFC. Geez, not at HFC. No, I mean, I was 23 when I started mine, so I was miles out of that. So, and I support this. There's a young kid in Brisbane called a chap called Taj Babari. He's got a business called 56 Creations. He's amazing. Whatever he's going to do next, I'll just back him. Just a great young kid. So you do come across just the amazing ones, but I don't know. HFC seems, I don't know, bloody young, to be honest. But once again, skills, network, problem, solution. And if you got that handled, then you're probably going to succeed.
Okay, so maybe a gap year? They finish HSC.
Never had a gap year when I was around. What's this gap year stuff? It's just kids too lazy at university. Gap year. Send them to the army, for Christ's sake. That'll fix them up.
Well, it was compulsory in Germany, I think, army and social year. This is great. So going back to your investment portfolio, if you had a regional area like Coffs Harbour, would you focus on a certain area coverage to allow enough entrepreneurs to come together? So sometimes the deal flow is a challenge to many investors, and you have 600 pitches every year and you select 8. I can imagine it can be quite challenging to a smaller area like Mid-North Coast to actually find those opportunities. Do you find there's a better way to do it? Do you find there's an opportunity for regional Australia maybe to come together? Or how would you approach the dilemma of exposing the right deals to investors? It's tough. So in my year as chief entrepreneur, I travel a lot, and you go to Richmond or Cloncurry or Mount Isa or wherever, and people say, how do we build Silicon Valley here? I'm like, I'm struggling to build it in Brisbane, because the feedstock for the startup businesses is highly skilled young people, and there's in Sydney struggle apparently to do that, and Brisbane struggle, Melbourne struggle. Cloncurry's got no chance. Coffs Harbour, probably has no chance. To build a viable, self-sustaining ecosystem doesn't mean you shouldn't try. It doesn't mean you're not going to get the gems. There's an awesome business built out of Townsville called Safety Culture. Yeah, Luke and Nia. So you can do absolutely bloody miraculous things. Don't get me wrong, but they're outliers. They're not. They're not the rule. So, and I want to encourage it once again. So it's all going to come. So yes, as investors, we want deal flow. We want the easiest amount of deal flow. We can get people walking through the door. We can pick and choose who we invest in, because we're people and we're lazy. We want things easy. To have to sort of get around the state or the country and sort of scrape this deal flow together, when you can just go to a large city and it just walks through the door. We're just lazy. Y Combinator introduced something called Startup School. If you guys don't know what Y Combinator is, as probably one of the best, one of the top accelerators in the world from USA, and they're trying to attract as many startups as possible. And I think through the Startup School, they attract now, 1,000 or maybe 10,000 startups to apply virtually, and they invest into 1,000 startups, $15,000 US. Just to prove that they're solving a problem. And then subsequently, if you get accepted into the accelerator, into 100, they invest 150,000 US. Is there something like that possible in Australia, to create a virtual accelerator, to have those people applying to it?
You'll find that 2/3, 3/4 of those companies aren't from the US, they're from overseas. Y Combinator is like alien. It's that far off to the right. I think the Y Combinator accelerator cohort's now 200 companies, which is just stupid. You can't work on 200 companies. It's crazy. It used to be 12. So Y Combinator are leading the pack of Silicon Valley stupidity, to be honest. They're doing good at it, so they've got a formula there somewhere. Do you think we can scrape together for Australia? No, I don't think we can. Australia's 23 million people. Silicon Valley has an international draw card of maybe 500 million people trying to get into those programs. So we have to be careful. We can do lots of things well. We can't. Now I sound like I'm a bit cynical, but we just have to measure ourselves in some respects. But measuring yourself against Y Combinator it's like anyone here measuring themselves against Arnold Schwarzenegger. He said, where was that buff bloke? Maybe not him. But, you know, you got to be realistic, I suppose. So there's other programs around that are more realistic. Measuring against Y Combinator, they've invested, what, you know, 180 million bucks, and they're worth like 18 billion or something, you know, it's just crazy.
It's aim high. I hope there's potential for regional Australia to make something with, you know, bringing outsiders from outside Australia into Australia with high potential. And those startups I'm thinking of that would be of interest.
Yeah, let's get real. Okay, you're bringing people from outside Australia into regional Australia. I mean,
yeah.
So you know, the local council, let alone the state government, has no impact into immigration legislation. So the biggest issue we've got in Australia is actually the dysfunctional nature of our federation. Right, so the fact that the feds set immigration, they also set income taxing, although we should devolve that back to the states to make that a lot easier.
Yeah.
So there's a variety of, and I like more democracy, so I like our 3 tiers of government. I actually like that. We just have to work with it and understand that we get no say in immigration. So wanting and hoping that we can change immigration policy is just like borrowing a problem. It's never going to happen.
Yeah, I think that feeds into, so Adrian and I, we were they're quite involved in regional Australia, and there was always the skills audit, and you know the skills audit came back with, okay, we need more chefs, we need more blueberry pickers and things like that. So if we have a skills audit that we need more technical people here in the regions to help the startups to implement what they actually want to do, because the technical level is simply not here. I think there's potential for the regional visa to make that happen. And yeah, I know it's a big, hairy, audacious goal, but maybe one day.
Yeah, but you need a draw card. I mean, I think you got to work on. It's really weird, like government policy people. They're all big hearted, but they're all a bit silly. And that they sit there and sort of say, what we want is more innovative companies. So let's spend more money, for example, on university research, and they'll invent shiny things that we'll never use. You know, if you want more innovative companies, encourage people to start innovative companies. It's an amazingly simple statement, if you know what I mean. So make it easy to start. You know, this whole Banking Royal Commission, so this is my rant on regulation again, because I hate regulation, but we had the Banking Royal Commission, there was just some disgraceful behaviour uncovered from banks, and none of us knew that, right? Yeah, please. The outcome from that's going to be more regulation. How stupid is that? So now it used to be a $25 million a year bill to start as a bank, just for your regulation, just to employ people to do your regulation box ticking. Now it's going to be $35 million a year to do that. What investor is going to invest in that? The answer to banking regulation issues is to remove the banking behaviour issues is remove regulation. It's obvious that banking CEOs don't give a stuff about the law. They're willing to cop the fines as a cost of doing business. The only thing they care about is loss of revenue. The only thing big companies care about is loss of revenue. Why I like startups is startups threaten big companies with loss of revenue and rapidly take market share. In the banking sector, in highly regulated sectors, it's hard because the amount of expense you've got to spend to get over the regulation bar is massive. That's why big companies like regulation. If we remove regulation, the small companies come in and go, great, I'll start taking that big bank's revenue. That gets the CEO's attention. Because like honest, the threat of going to jail, as it's been proved, actually doesn't. Right? But him being sacked by the board, oh yeah, that's a big one. Him losing his bonus, that's a big one. Competition fixes most issues. The more regulation you put in, the less competition you get.
There you go. Running towards the end of my questions, do you have any questions to us? I never actually asked the question to our speakers to ask us.
There's a question up here though. You saved me.
There will be some questions from the audience coming, and maybe we can have light in the audience, and I'll hand over the mic so we can record the question.
So earlier on...
I'm Steve, who are you?
I'm Daniel.
Great, Daniel.
Pleased to meet you.
Likewise.
So earlier on you were talking about startups and your definition of a startup. One thing I didn't really hear covered was, when's a startup stop being a startup? You kind of talked about the area, but not...
Well, I worked at Google in 2008, and Google in 2008 still said they were a startup. So I think it's an attitudinal thing, to be honest. And I think they were full of shit. But when's it stop being a startup? So I think it comes down to a level of growth. So as an investor, I look at a startup right now. We actually look at things like monthly growth. So let's say you've got 20,000 a month in revenue, for example. If you grow that by 10% a month, that's massive, right? Which means every 7 months you'll double your business. So typically, if you're doubling your revenue every 12 months or less, you're probably startup. If you're still growing and you're getting up to the higher numbers and you're sort of doubling every sort of 18 months, you might be a scale up or something along those lines. So for me, it's about growth of business and about how fast you scale that curve up to means that you're still a startup. Otherwise, if you're not doing that, you're probably what we call going sideways or failed startup.
Yep, awesome, thank you.
Great, thank you. So it is question time, yep.
Hi Steve, I'm Greg. How you doing?
Good.
Look, yeah, I grew up in Brisbane. So.
Good man.
Good man. I've been in Melbourne the last 12 years, and we ended up, but we ended up moving up here, ironically, for the connectivity. We had 15 months in Melbourne in a main area where we couldn't get any connectivity at all, which was... And so Coffs actually has a lot going for it in that regard, I might add. One of the things that happened in Brisbane, though, is I always found governments largely to be an impediment to the things we were doing. In fact, I went to an awards night in Brisbane. I was invited along, and the guy who'd won the business award the previous year sat beside me, and he told me the whole night how he wished he'd never heard of the awards system and the government and whatever, because he just believed things and it just slowed him down. And so in general, I've taken that to heart along the way, but there are things that we find really, really hard that you just can't do yourself. And so, for example, we sell, one of the things we do is we sell training courses globally, right? And so one of the problems with that is things like GST here in Australia. So now that we've started charging overseas people GST for digital downloads, the problem is every other country's done that the same. And the problem is how are you meant to deal with that? Like, I mean, we're now supposed to, register for tax in 200 different countries and submit tax and stuff. I mean, this sort of thing is the sort of thing that I think the government could actually solve for us, where like in the EU, they have a global clearinghouse for tax VAT across but like for an Australian company who needs to sell digitally in a whole lot of different places, how on earth do you deal with the tax? And again, the government could set up a clearinghouse that helped with that sort of thing.
Thanks, Craig. So, look, awards, I think if they don't take much time to go for them, they're pretty good free press if you win them. So how much time you spend is up to you. So never, ever ask the government for help. It will always end badly. When's it end well? International taxation is a huge issue, lots of problems. You know the US has 9,973 taxation jurisdictions. So you think we got problems here? No, nothing. Look, you know, I'd sort of say that, you know, the hardest thing about getting the business is getting the business. And I think Steve Eric Rees calls it go from 0 to 1. 0 to 1 is the hardest thing you can do. And then the second hardest thing is selling. The third hardest thing is collecting money because no one wants to pay. If you don't want challenges in business, don't get into business, basically, because every day is a new challenge. And hopefully it's a challenge you can solve when you feel pretty good, and that helps sort of, you know, with your mission in life in general. One thing you can guarantee is that governments will always stuff up your day. They'll always change the rules. And it's one of those punches you've got to roll with. One thing I have learned is that any time you ask the government to help, it never actually improves things. So no answers for you, just cynicism.
Okay, next question over here.
Hello, Steve. Nice to hear from you. I'll give you the context. My name is Tyagi. I'm an aged care specialist. I'm a doctor and a specialist. Deal with brain, dementia, aged care. And so it's away from tech. And I'm trying to put together a program to reduce obesity and to get people increase their longevity and reduce disability in Australia. And the question for you, Steve, is that when we start, there are goals and there are targets. So goals could be different. The goal could be reducing or implementing a program, and the target becomes like $1 million a year or 500,000 in a year. Sometimes we get lost in the money part of it. Oh yes, I'm achieving 200,000 or 300,000. What should be the focus? What is your experience? I've read your biography a few times, because when I was invited here, I just thought, like, when you started, what was your goal? To achieve the solution to a problem or to make $1 million? And that is it. I've made $1 million, I've sold the company. Thank you.
No, so I unfortunately remember the goal very well. A few years ago, my wife actually found the spreadsheet, which I think was in the very early Microsoft database. I don't know what it's called now, but no, it was a really shitty spreadsheet business they had before Excel. Yeah, whatever. That was crap. But I thought I could get $278,000 a year in revenue from 200 customers, and I'd have the same wage then as I was a soldier, and we could pay the whole thing. Very simple, very simple straight line spreadsheet, as all dumb entrepreneurs do when they first start. Look, the reason I'm so over, and I'm actually, please, if you're in the audience, you're going to pitch me later on, and you have a social enterprise, please don't do that, because you'll get a very straight, honest, and probably disappointing answer from me. I don't like them. I don't like them because I get pitched a lot, and I don't like, for example, I don't like cryptocurrencies, right? And so I go very hard. So I take a very binary position. I'm either for it or totally against it. And so, for example, I am getting to your question, don't get me wrong, in social entrepreneurship, I'm very against it because I see a lot of very hyper-talented young people who want to dedicate their lives to a bloody go-nowhere charity. And I'm like, oh my God, it's... they want to be a social entrepreneur, and which is great. I love that. I love the passion they have for other people. But the world's best social entrepreneur is a man called Bill Gates. He made $120 billion. He will cure AIDS, not governments. He will cure polio, not governments, or eradicate polio. Excuse me. So you do good by doing well. And if you have a business that's also a half charity, or a half business that's also a charity, you're going to kill the business and kill your charity at the same time. And so I go hard one side. And we can argue that, but for me, it's just to make people think really hard about their choices. So the reason I like profit is because with profit you do good things. I would not have done River City Labs if I hadn't actually done well in business. So everything has flown from that. And so, to be honest, I'm probably lucky in that some of those decisions have reinforced my views, and if they'd gone the other way, maybe it'd be different, but it hasn't, so therefore I get to brag about it. So it doesn't matter. Go ahead, be profitable, do good business. I'm not saying, make sarin gas or build landmines. I'm saying just do good, honourable business that you're proud of, that you never go wrong if there's three stakeholders. There's your customers, there's your staff, and there's your shareholders. And if they're happy, then you've probably got a pretty good business, right? Don't do wrong by then, and you'll probably get along okay in life. So make money, and just be a good business person. Employ people, pay your super, pay your holiday pay, and make cash.
Hey Steve, how you going?
Hey, good.
As a Pipe Networks client, thank you.
Oh, good.
You talked about skills as the first thing of your three. So if you had to give three skills, like sales, programming, marketing, what would be your three top skills that a startup entrepreneur should have?
Yeah, good question. So when I talk about skills, I talk about the core founding group. So if there's one person or three founders, it's skills shared, let's say, right? But in that core founding group. So the technical skills to pull off whatever it is they have to pull off, whether it be programming or beer brewing, but someone has to know how to do that stuff, right? After that, definitely a very close second is, I wish I'd known more about bookkeeping, basic accounting. The mistakes we made could have so easily killed us in the early days of our business. Luckily they didn't. So have the skills to understand what bookkeeping, journal entries, profit loss balance sheets, cash flow especially means. That's really important. It's really basic. We're not talking economics here. We're talking really basic bookkeeping. And the third one would be networking. My God, if you're in business and you can't network and you can't walk up to someone, total stranger, shake their hand, understand, meet, you can't do that 100 times in a night. Not that you have to, but you're capable of doing that. Then you've got to learn that skill. You've just got to get good at the conversation. You've got to engage. You've got to give a little bit. So tech, accounting, networking. Is that good?
Hi, Steve. I'm Kylie. Can you just try and cast yourself back to the day when you made your 10th sale and you thought, holy shit, I might be onto something here? What were the things that you focused on after you were convinced you've solved a problem, and why?
Oh, I can't recall the 10th. But I'm trying. The seminal sale, I think, is what you're saying. So, so I went. So the story is with the actual, not the story, but how it happened was I had this mad idea to start this ISP thing in late 1994, and my wife came and picked me up from work. We only had one car, so I got picked up from work, and I had this idea to take out $11,000 home loan deposit to start a business. Fully expecting she'd say, "You are just full of stop, no, we're going to go buy a house," which was a sane decision. And so I outlined, and it would have been like a 12-minute drive home. 6 minutes in, I'd finished the whole pitch. And she's gone, "Yeah, we should do that." I'm like, "Oh Christ, now I've got to go and do it." So I remember that. Went and bought all this gear, got it all installed. Literally installed 14 phone lines into a rented Army married quarter, right? Which is, didn't ask for permission because I knew they'd say no, so that was a wasted conversation. So I just went and did it anyway. And it took 3 weeks for the first person to actually get a customer. Like the loneliest 3 goddamn weeks you've ever seen in your life, right? So I remember those first 3 weeks of, what the hell have I done? And then people started dialing in, and it started working. But I'm trying to think of the biggest customer win. There was a moment in the second business, Pipe Networks, where we're in the office in Brisbane, and Bevan and I, we started, all of a sudden we were looking at this, had this laser light focus on the P&L because it wasn't going that well up to that point. And we just realised that things were just turning around. We started signing customers, and it's just like literally our margins on these products, like our subsequent margin on dark fibre was like 99% gross margin. You could only make more money by selling drugs. It was just fantastic, right? This is Coffs Harbour, so that probably happens here, right? Well, it's up the coast at Nimbin, sorry, that's Nimbin, sorry. And we realised that, we were probably onto something. And it was a curious day, to be honest. And so I don't recall exactly where there's moments you can pick out and you can remember, and you sort of cherish those. But the moment I thought, oh my God, this is actually working. No, you're right. It would have been back, and it would have been like 2002 or 3. So I mean, that was a long time ago. That's been a lot of glasses of rosé since then. What do we do then? I think we ultimately we set up on the path with Pipe Networks, for example, to build more of what we're doing. So we were very lucky in that we actually had our customers. So we actually went to our customers and convinced them to pay us up front for a service that probably that we'd charge them. The first one was $96,000. I think it was $96,000 and $24,000 a year. We charged them $96,000 for something that would cost us $16,000 to install. But we convinced them it would cost a lot more. So there's no one here from Next Gen Networks in the room, is there? No, that's a good thing. We just realised we could do this, and there was no point after. It was just like, wow, this is working. Well, I suppose we just got the monkey out, we turned the handle on the machine, and customers and revenue spat out. Just rinse and repeat, do the same thing.
G'day Steve, it's Luke. We're all about startups here, obviously, tonight, and a lot of people go into startups underfunded. And earlier on, you touched on that with the $25,000 investment. So as a startup entrepreneur, you'd have a concept of how much money you may need. What's the reverse on that as an investor? If you're looking at someone pitching you a startup and you know that they're underfunded, how can you give us a way to analyse that so that we don't turn around and ask that investor for more money again?
Well, I suppose a lot of it comes from the fact we see a lot of these things, and we have a pattern matching. We've seen a lot of deal flow, and we understand what happens. And we follow a lot of the companies we don't invest in. We follow as well to understand their progress. So do we make a mistake? I suppose is the question we're trying to answer there. You just know what stuff costs. You just know that a person nowadays plus or minus costs. There's a regional area, so we've got $80,000 plus or minus 10 grand, I suppose. Brisbane's about 90, 95, 100 plus or minus 10 grand, depending what you're doing with them, type thing. So, you know, if you tell me you need $1 million, I just go, 10 people. You know what I mean? What do you do with 10 people? Or, you know, okay, halve that, bit of expense per here and there, understand what happens. So you just know where that cash is going to fall. And you also know that revenue always comes slower than you predict. So you tend to halve expectations there. Look, if you're in business, and especially if you're going to pitch to investors, I just recommend that you learn very simple integer mathematics. People are surprised I'm so good at maths. Jesus Christ, I know nothing at maths, but I can probably do 12 times tables. I can do 12 times tables off the top of my head, for example. I know every percentage between 1 and 1 and 40th, right? And I know the rule of 72. Who knows the rule of 72? The rule of 72 is the most empowering thing you'll ever come across in business. It basically says that, let's say, for example, if you have a 6% interest rate per year, right, divide 6 into 72, it will take 12 years, that equals 12, it will take 12 years to double your cash. If you grow at 6% per month, for example, compounding, every year you'll double your business. Rule of 72 is the most empowering thing you'll ever learn in business. And just Google it, rule of 72. But divide X into 72, that gives you time period. So I know rules of thumb, and I can do basic integer maths. And sometimes it stuns people. Well, how did you do that? And I say, I divided 100 by 8. It isn't sometimes as simple as that. How didn't you do that? Is probably the question. So, runway. So runway's about, you know, there's some shit terms in startup. One of the shittest terms is cash burn. Who fucking burns cash? Can you imagine the bonfire? You sit there just throw money under the fire. Look, it burns bright. It's plastic now, I suppose. Probably smell terrible. So runway is an interesting concept. So, you know, you want an infinite runway. Not always possible. Like literally, your easiest form of funding is your customers. After you go out there and you beg investors to invest in you, and investors don't give you money, you sell them equity. After they invest money in you, you still have to go out and talk to customers. You don't get to bypass that step. And the more you sell before you do that step, the more experience you have. You can sort of say, I went out and I sold, you know, $100,000 to these customers. They loved it. The investor's going to say, well, it's great. If you don't do that, they say, what have you done? You say, I'm going to go out and sell $100,000. Well, come back when you have, because I don't believe you. So, you know, just easiest money's from customers. It really is.
Hello, my name is Yana. I'm on the Fantastic Council Ladies team. All entrepreneurs and startups are taught not to give up on their, not to be persistent. We have heard about Google trying to sell their idea, Harry Potter being rejected 13 times. So basically, keep on trying, be in the right time at the right place. When do you give up, however? Because they're just bad ideas sometimes. So what can tell you what is a bad idea?
Yeah. You hope you have some good and honest advisors around you, to be honest. You don't quite know. When do you give up? When do you give up? I mean, yeah, there's now a lot more spoken about mental health issues in entrepreneurship, as it should be, because it can be quite stressful. And stress is a weird thing. Stress comes out. It's there's a physical in a gyroscope. There's something called precession. Precession is when you spin something really fast. If you push it, the force comes out at right angles. Stress is like that. If someone's under stress and you push them, it comes out at a weird angle. So really, really badly. So before that is what I'd say. Well, and you don't know when that is, right? And you honestly don't know when that is. So surround yourself with people who will give you honest opinions. You know, there's nothing worse. People sort of get a hard time and say, you're the angry, cranky one. Well, no, I'm just the honest one. All the rest are just bullshit and sweet and saccharine and polite. You're in business. This is the one thing you can do that may send you bankrupt. Right? If someone's not going to tell you something honest, you can ignore their advice and say, well, that's a cranky person. Ignore, that's fine. It costs me nothing, costs you nothing. That's, you know, we used to do that before we got perennially offended in this country. You can take the advice, listen to it. No, I think he's full of shit. That's a fine reaction. But I'm not going to say, wow, yeah, you should keep sending yourself bankrupt. That's a good idea. I'm never going to do that. So if people aren't giving you honest advice, you need to ditch that person giving you advice and stop before you get in trouble, which is a bad answer. I don't have a real answer for you.
Hi Steve, one quick question. Callum, in relation to your investments that you've chosen over the years through Shark Tank and so on, what's the success rate of your choices with your investments as a percentage, and how are they going?
Well, it depends how you count them. So there's lots of ways that you can count these things. So, and you know, we try and benchmark some bits and pieces out there. So there's something called mark to market, which means, you know, you actually value if I bought a share in your startup at $1 and then someone else came along and invested at $2, I write up my holding on that. I'm book value to twice what I invested at, and that's, you know, you can do that. And we do, because that's the same way we do a listed portfolio. So if a company, we look at the listed price of a share and we value based on that. I prefer cash on cash. So, you know, what we put in, so we've got around about a bit over 1.5 times back the cash we've actually invested as actual cash exits. That's actually what really counts. That's what keeps my wife happy. So that's over, for the most part, that's probably the majority of that was spent over the last 4 years. So I think it's about a 27% rate of return.
So thanks again for everyone coming tonight. Thanks to the sponsors. And Luke from Artisti, he has some giveaways as well. So thank you very much, Luke. And yeah, thank you to Steve.